All right, guys, welcome to the Mike F. Garage shootout on the YESWELDER and the Harbor Freight Titanium. They're both, honestly, they're both good welders. We're going to do a little bit of testing on both of them. I got both of them hooked up to gas. We got the 150 of mix on this one. We got the 55 on that one mix. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to go ahead and talk about the welders. Then later in the video, we'll be doing some testing on both the welders and kind of show you how that they work. And hopefully, I'm going to have a little bit of trouble videoing something on this, and I'll tell you what it is now. On this one, I have to move the control around, and both of them actually, I'll get some weird flickering on the lights. So I can't get that to come out with the camera I have. I don't know how to work the settings to do that. I'm not a camera expert, but I do know a little bit about welding. I've done a lot of restoration stuff on cars. So if that's what you're looking to buy a welder for, weld in some patch panels and frame welding and whatever, both of these machines can do that pretty well. The titanium is going to have a little more trouble when it comes to thicker steel, and you're going to need to have both sizes of wire. So you'll need to have some 023 or 025, whoever makes it calls it different. They have small wire and big wire as far as with gas welding. And then they have like 035, which is flex core. So basically there's two different sizes. Some people call it 023, some call it 024, some call it 025, 0235. There's a whole bunch of different names for the smaller wire, and then there's the 030. So with the titanium, you will definitely need both. With both of them, I would not suggest using the Harbor Freight wire. I don't know, maybe the YESWELDER will work okay with it, but I haven't tried it yet. But the titanium really likes other brands of wire. For some reason, there must be a lot of slag in their wire or cheap steel or something like that, and it just doesn't. It burns away a little bit sometimes when you use it. So it does well with it, okay, but it's a little spotty. It'll stop on you sometimes and stuff like that, where if you use the other wire. And we're talking about generic wire. I don't have anything like Lincoln wire or Miller wire, anything like that to run, so I can't really tell you if that's any better, and I don't know. I don't think it would be, because the regular generic wire that you get from the welding store seems to work fine. So anyway, let's talk about the two different things about both welders. They're both very, very different. It's almost like both of them have good characteristics, and both of them have things that may be a little bit different or down. Okay, with the YESWELDER, it's a little bit different. I'm going to say I don't think it's really a down thing, but it does not have. You'll notice on here, you have wire speed, you've got heat selector, a knob, and you have, let's move you a little closer. You have wire speed, heat selector, and you have inductance. All on knobs. You can turn it, you can change it, you can adjust it however you want. However, on the YESWELDER, it has basically, you enter in the thickness of the metal you're welding by millimeter. So for instance, I'm welding a lot of 20 gauge, so it has 0.7 and then it has 1.0. So I use 0.7 as a thickness, because it's a little bit thicker than 0.7, but it's not quite as thick as 1.0, and it works just fine at that setting. In fact, it works amazing at that setting. So right when I open the box. So on this one, what you're going to find is there's only one knob, okay, and with that one knob you control some things, but most of it's done with these buttons here, and most of it's automatic. Now, to a lot of us, like myself, when I first tried this, I was kind of like, ooh, man, that's not good. That's a bummer, until I actually started welding with it, and I got to tell you, they figured it out better than me, because I can weld a smoother, flatter weld with this welder than I can with that welder on the automatic setting. So it is a plus It's something that you might think is a negative when you first look at it, and then after you use it, it is a plus. It is huge, a huge plus, because especially if you're new to welding, settings is basically everything. So if anybody can pull the trigger and move the wand around, that's not hard to do, but getting the settings right is always the toughest part about welding. So if you're new to welding, I would say this might be something to really consider, one of these YESWELDERs, because it does it for you pretty well. It also does give you the voltage. So for instance, on this one here, I'll weld at, let's say, around 14 volts, 13.8 when I'm welding sheet metal, something like that, and about 150 to 170 on the wire speed. Okay, on this one, it will give me the voltage settings. It says right here, 0.7. Okay, and I won't turn it on to show you because it's not going to light up correctly. You won't be able to read it. I found that out doing my last video. So you'll turn on here, it says 0.7, and over here it'll say 13.8 volts, which is very similar to that one, what I'm normally welding at. So it kind of gives you the data so that if later on, or maybe you don't have this YESWELDER somewhere and you want to weld, you can at least kind of know what those settings are, so that you can try and adjust one of those if you had it. If that's all you had, you could kind of try and figure it out. Figuring out the wire speed is always the toughest part, so, and it does matter. But it does give you at least the voltage so that you could do that later if you wanted to without this welder. So roughly the price points are very competitively close. YESWELDER does change their pricing a lot, so you might see Memorial Day sales or something like that, and I'm going to tell you, when you see one of those sales or you click on it and it has the right price, you better grab it, because it might not be the next hour or day. So think about that when you're doing it. So both machines have a metal feed system and will take the large spool of wire. Those are the only machines that I look at. The disadvantage to the YESWELDER, I will tell you right now, is that this thing is kind of cramped in here. It's a little harder to get to the wheels and, feed the wire. It's doable. It's not bad, but it is a little bit of a downer. And see, this one's a lot easier to get to on this one. Another advantage to the titanium is it has a spool gun. You can add a spool gun to this one. You cannot add one to this. People have done it. There's a video on adding one to this, but it's kind of funky, a little weird to do, and not recommended by the manufacturer. So if you're going to weld aluminum, which I believe, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure you need different gas for that. I've never welded with a spool gun on mine, so I can't tell you. Typically, if I need to weld aluminum, I'm going to be using a TIG, which is what I have this little dusty grater for, because I always have straight argon on that machine. I don't want to have to switch bottles and all that stuff. I'm not sure if you have to do that on the spool gun for these, but I'm like I said, I don't do it, so I don't know. An advantage to the YESWELDER is it is 110 and 220, and it is also a stick welder. It's a TIG welder. It's kind of a TIG welder. I'm not going to really say it is, because it has that, you have to strike an arc type of thing, and that kind of dulls your tungsten, and then that kind of defeats the purpose of being a TIG welder. So I would not recommend using it for that. But if you needed to, if you had something you wanted to TIG weld, or you were doing stainless steel or something like that, and you didn't have anything else, you could use this machine to do that. Of course, I know for sure stainless steel, you're going to need different gas for that. So it's always a bit of a pain to change the gas. So just keep that in mind. But this machine is 110 and 220, and it's a 205. This one is a 140 amp. So that is a lot more, that will weld a lot thicker steel. I've welded some thicker steel with it. It seems to do pretty good. I don't know if I've used it on 220 yet. But I'm sure if you use it on 220 and you're welding thicker stuff, it gets pretty darn hot. Seems like it would work pretty well for that. So the YESWELDER has a lot of pluses. Another plus is, okay, the torch is definitely better quality than the Harbor Freight. That's definitely a weak point with this welder. It does work fine if you just really baby it. Do not, if you own one of these, or if you're looking at buying one, do not roll it up in tight circles. Leave it, see how it's very loosely around the machine? That's how I leave mine, and it's lasted well over a year with a lot of welding I've done with it. One of the things that really irritates the hell out of me on this titanium, the one big thing for me that just might kill the deal and might make me keep the YESWELDER is this. Is after you let off on the trigger, it runs the gas for like 3 seconds afterwards. That's supposed to keep contaminants from getting in the weld or whatever while it's cooling or something like that. But honestly, I find it kind of unnecessary and it really irritating, and it uses a hell of a lot of gas. It is a huge downer for me. It kind of made me really want to look for something else, and that's why when YESWELDER hit me up and said, hey, we want to send you a machine to try it, I was like, bring it on. So if this is the only option for you, or you already own it, you know, I'm not going to say throw it away and go grab something else, but you know, that is an issue. That is something that is really irritating. It does great welding. It does a lot of advantages. Being able to adjust everything is sometimes kind of a nice thing to do, especially when we're welding up holes and things like that. It's a little bit tougher with the YESWELDER. If you've got a big gap and you're trying to fill it, it's a little bit harder to do with the YESWELDER than with the titanium. But with the titanium, every time I let off the trigger, it's running the gas. So it's just like money going out of your pocket, and it kind of irritates you a lot, because those gas bottles, when you're paying $50, $60 to fill up one of those monsters, it gets pretty, you know, it gets you pretty upset. So what you're able to do with this machine is, if you have a larger gap, you have to just do a lot more tacks, and it does that very well. And you can bring the weld up slowly and do it that way, because you're not able to turn the wire up to try and fill in a gap. So it becomes it's a little bit harder as far as that goes, but most other things, it is way easier to weld with, because you're not getting the settings wrong and then trying to figure it out, especially if you're a new guy, just started welding. I would say the YESWELDER would be a huge plus. Might be something I would consider if I was brand new, for sure. I would probably just try it first and then learn with that, and then decide what to do later. And you might end up just keeping the thing and probably end up enjoying it and weld a ton of stuff with it. I've seen a lot of new guys come with get into welding in patch panels and keeping this thing and loving it, you know. So, you know, it's not hard to fall in love with. It's actually pretty cool. You know, we'll check it out right now. So those are kind of the key push points on both the good and bad. The ground clamp is a little bit better with the YESWELDER. It's a little bit cheap with this one. They're almost the same. I would say that's not going to be a deal killer either way. The winding gun is a little bit better with this one. I hear that these are replaceable with the generic one. Harbor Freight, you can buy one. There's somebody who makes one. Don't know how good the quality is. Harbor Freight does not make replacement parts, I don't think, for it. I don't think they make the wand that I'm aware of. So again, buying the warranty is kind of a good thing if you do that and buy it every year. And you bought the titanium, you're probably going to be okay if you have that welder right now. Again, like I said, they're not bad. They actually work pretty good. I really enjoyed this welder a lot until I got this one. And I still haven't decided which one to keep. I think I'm going to keep the YESWELDER, but I just don't know. I'm going to weld with it a lot more first and try a bunch of different things. But I'll show you why I really, really like the YESWELDER over the titanium. And we're going to show you that right now because of the automatic settings. The things that I thought would be a disadvantage are actually a huge advantage. So let's take a look at them. Before we get into the actual demo of the welders, Real quick, I want to give a quick thank you to Dana for sending me out these really nice gloves. There's a link in the description. They have a nice reinforced area here, very nice stitching. They have that a little thicker leather. Those of you guys who watch my channel, remember when I actually purchased these. Then they don't have the extra reinforcement here. The stitching is kind of crappy. The leather's kind of thin. These are a little bit thicker leather. If you look here, pretty thick, and but they're also still very pliable. You know, like those old Harbor Freight ones. You get the stiff ones like this. They're kind of have that real crappy stiff leather, really thin. These are pretty nice for a little more money. You know, you get something a little nicer. Check them out. They're in the link in the description. Talk to you later in the video. I'll just start this off with just listening to the welder. See how much quieter. The Harbor Freight's very quiet. It's on right there. So let's turn on the YESWELDER. Quite a bit louder, but you can really hear the air movement, so maybe that's actually a good thing. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and do a butt weld. Okay, that's what the hardest thing to do. I've got the metal pretty clean. So we're going to do some butt welding. We're going to do some welding on some dirty metal. These are things that are real tests for welders. A lot of people don't do these things this way, but I'm going to do a real test on this so you guys can see. And if you notice here, I have this metal hanging off the edge. If I put it on top of another piece of metal, if I were to put it back and put it on top of here, that wouldn't be a very accurate test because that metal behind it will kind of absorb some of the heat, and we kind of want to see how this thing really butt welds on its own. So we're going to leave it off the edge like that. I'm going to go ahead and do some butt welding on this. And this is the YESWELDER. So, all right, well, away we go, guys. I got the gas set at 10 pounds too, so it's really low gas. Really don't need much more than that. Some guy said there's a 15 or 20. You don't really need to. Oh, that's not that good. Too far away. My fault. All too long. Alright, so it didn't sound the prettiest. Few spaces. I burned a hole. I held it a little bit too long. Again, that's my fault. It's not the welder. That's me. Now, let's look at how flat this is. Let me let that cool off a little bit, and I'll bring you back in. Alright guys, I got bad lighting in here, so I totally messed up. But you can see here I got off the butt. Here I was on it. I got off of it. But look how flat that weld is. It's like super flat. Let's give it another try. I just plugged this thing in, started doing it. Let me do this one more time because I'm just getting it set up right now. And let's take a look. But I just want to show you how flat that is. And that, yeah, you know, when you don't have good lighting, you mess up. It happens. So let's try it again. Alright, so I'm going to stitch this thing along just like I did last time. I'm just going to stitch it. I'm going to shoot little spot welds along in the gap. Hopefully I can see it. I can't see very well because I'd film this outside, but I don't think the lighting's very good. It's a little warmer out right now. I don't feel like being out in that heat, so got to tolerate a little bit of stuff for me, guys. So anyway, let's do this again. See how it works out. All right, here we go. Go back here, do a little bit more. Probably need to be just a little bit closer. I'm a little bit too far away. I think that's why it's kind of doing that spatter. But it still doesn't matter. It's a good weld. Let's look at it. Alright, so you can see here that portion I was doing pretty good, and then user kind of got jacked up there. That's where I got the little bouncies going on. And of course that can be ground off and then retouched or whatever, and that's normal welding. The metal is not perfectly clean, which is kind of depicts normal things that happen. For some reason my grinding disc just isn't the greatest. It's glazed over or something. So anyway, we'll do the same thing. I'll use the same technique with the Harbor Freight welder, and let's see if I can get it this good. And you notice it didn't keep running gas. Listen to the other one. We'll do it by the same method, and we'll see how much gas I use. It just goes through a lot, but let's try the Harbor Freight welder. Alright, so I had to set up my settings. I got it at 13.8 and 159 on the wire speed with 0.025 wire. I've had the same wire in each machine. Both came from the same supplier. But my grounds are both on this piece of aluminum. I could have been getting a bad ground with this dirty metal that I'm setting on here, the magnet. So that could have been an issue as well. So, you know, I would not take that 100%, you know, like, it could be, some of it could be user issues, you know. So, anyway, let's try the Harbor Freight one next to it. It has a different flow gauge than what you used to have on it, and it seems to put out quite a bit less gas. It's, I don't know, it seems to be, the settings on it seem to be different. So, it has this kind of flow gauge. I'll show you. It came with this kind. And I have one of these. I think these ones work better, and you can run these up to, I think, 20 and not use as much gas, just so you know. I mean, that's what I'm looking at. I'm trying to get the same amount of gas to come out of the nozzle and make it fair. So anyway, let's try welding this one up same way. But remember, the gas is going to keep running the whole time I'm doing it. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear that, but the gas was running the entire time. It never shut off. Listen. I don't know why it does. It's not doing it now. Maybe it's the gas nozzle, the thing I put on there. I just replaced that. Maybe that's one of the issues you can fix with the Harbor Freight welder, is replace and put this kind of a flow gauge on it. What I put on here now. So these actually do work different, I guess. See, I like the way this works better. And it came with this one. But for some reason, this one works great on this machine. So I'm not really as confident that this is going to be as penetrated as the other one is. because again, I had to do my own settings. The other one, I just turned it on, I put it on 0.7, and that was it. I didn't do a damn thing with the wire. There's no adjustments, just turn it on and go. Unfortunately, I didn't really get a chance to show you the penetration. I did have a couple misses on the other side. This is the penetration on this one. If you can see, I kind of didn't get it hot enough. There's a little bit of a gap there. Some of it I got it. The other one I had it pretty well penetrated all the way across. And if you can see here, there's quite a bit more weld to grind off there. So I can try, you know, and I can try to turn up the heat a little bit. Let's do that. Let's try turning up the heat a little bit and see if it works. But see, again, now I'm messing with settings, trying to get it to work as good as the YESWELDER did, and the other one I just turned it on, set it up to 0.7. It's at 0. That means that I haven't adjusted their settings. I went right with what they had. If I use the settings that are on the side of the machine here, it's usually not enough wire speed. Just so you know, if you do have the Harbor Freight machine, usually you have to turn the wire speed up quite a bit from where their settings are. Alright, so I turned the heat up, the wire speed down just a little bit. Let's see if it comes out any better. If I can get a little more penetration. Missed a little bit there. Can't see the greatest in here right now, but anyway, let's cool that off. Bring it back in. Take a look at it. Okay, I'm going to say that's decent penetration there. You can see pretty much welded all the way through, except for maybe at the very end. And this was about what I got first time with the YESWELDER. The penetration was about like this, but look at how it's a little more moundy than the other one. So, and I definitely got moundy towards the end here, and it's a lot more work to grind that off. So the automatic settings were definitely better than me, so that is definitely a plus. A plus for the Harbor Freight would be the fact that you can crank the wire speed up if you're trying to fill in something. Maybe that would help sometimes. But honestly, I'd rather have it just be right all the time. That's actually not quite as good. But still a really good welder. Harbor Freight's a great welder. I'm not going to say it's bad. But it just doesn't not quite the same as the YESWELDER. Alright, so what we're going to do next is I've got this piece of 1/8" steel, and I cut it at some point, I don't know what. I cut it all the way through. I think I did this with a plasma cutter. That's what it looks like to me. And I'm going to go ahead and weld 1/2 of it with the YESWELDER and 1/2 with the Harbor Freight. I'm going to start with the Harbor Freight. So I'm going to go ahead and weld this side of the same piece of steel with the Harbor Freight, and I'm going to guesstimate. I'll use the settings that are on the side of the box. Let's take a look. First of all, the Harbor Freight does not have a setting for 1/8, but I've just set it. The 14 gauge is the highest it goes for. The 0.06 wire or 0.25 it says on theirs. Again, it says 0.23. Those are the same wire. It's just different manufacturers call it something different. So I'm just going to go ahead and set with that. I don't want to pull the wire out and change it to 0.030 and all that stuff. That's like I said, the Harbor Freights, you're going to need to change the wire to the larger wire. It does work better on the larger wire when you're welding thicker stuff. So keep that in mind. It is a good welder. I'm not saying it's bad by just showing you these videos. This is just to show you, if you are looking at between the two, what might be better for you, and then that's, you know, again, up to you. All right, hopefully you guys can see. I've got it marked here. I'm gonna do this side with the Harbor Freight, the other side with the YESWELDER. I haven't even tested this, so I'm just gonna run a bead though. I can see. Hope I didn't miss. I did a little bit. I really can't see very good. That's really a pretty good weld. That's on not very clean metal. Penetration, not the greatest. That's probably because I missed a bit. But you can look here. You see, that's a decent looking weld. You know, it's not bad. It could, in my opinion, I think if I used the 030 wire, it would be a lot flatter than it is. Okay, it would be a lot flatter. I know from experience of using the 030, it likes the 030 better, and that's why they recommend it for the thicker welds. I'm going to go ahead and set this down right here. I'm going to turn the machine off, and I'm going to get the other one out, and I'll try and weld it this direction. I'm just trying to be, it's really not a very good direction for me to go the other way. So if I go out this direction, it's kind of fair test, and we can take a look at that. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it on to the setting that's on the machine and go with it. Alright, no fiddling with settings. I just put it to 3 millimeters, which is a little bit thinner than 1/8, but I happen to be about the same as the Harbor Freight, so let's just give it a shot, see what it goes. Yeah, definitely a little hotter weld. I'd say the Harbor Freight was a little on the cold side. It felt better. It sure did sound better. You know, I got to tell you guys, I've always noticed the Harbor Freight always sounds kind of weird, quiet. It doesn't sound so, you know, like with that real weld sound. It's always been that way, and it's okay. It works fine that way. I'm just saying that that's the way it works. The YESWELDER, I think, did a better job of welding that, just a little bit. I mean, the thicker steel, it really shines. That's what I'm finding. It's a little bit better welder for that. Again, it's a bigger welder. Penetration, it could have used maybe a little more heat. I could do a +1, +2, +3. And then it'll automatically do the wire speed and everything. All I do is just add on this welder. You just take this thing here and you push this button over here. I know you can't really see it right now, but you push this button a bunch of times, and then this light will light up. And then what you do is you just turn this knob to like +1 all the way to 10. And what it'll do is it'll increase the heat settings automatically, and it'll always be that way. So let's say if you want it to be at that, you know, +3 all the time to meet whatever your welding speed is or whatever, and it just seems to work better there, you can do that, and it'll just automatically, every time you turn it on, you set your thickness of your metal and you pull the trigger. You know, that's it. No fiddling with knobs. It's really kind of neat. With that respect, I think I really like the YESWELDER. There are some things, like I said, there's some pluses about the titanium, but overall I think it's just way easier to use. Alright, since I got the YESWELDER running, I am not going to clean this. We are just going to try and weld right through the yucky stuff. And let's see how well it does. I hopefully got a good enough ground. That's where you always end up with issues. But I've just got the grounding clamp right there on the aluminum. And it's on this piece of metal. And we're just going to weld it. Let's just see what happens. Really, honestly, if a lot of the cheaper welders, if you get one of those really cheap ones, the $129 one or something, it won't do this at all. It would help if I didn't miss. I didn't even change the settings. I just left it right where it was because it's pretty close. This is about, I think, 14 gauge. Look at that. It just puddled in there. Really nice. And that is a nice hot weld. It's all the way through penetrated. That's good penetration, really nice. I'm going to leave the other one, we're going to leave the settings exactly the same where it is right now because I was welding the same piece of steel. I just was welding a little bit thicker stuff. And that stuff, this thing just popped right through that rust and didn't care it was there and just went right through it. So it's a really good welder. They're both really good welders. Let's see how the Harbor Freight does. I know, guys, I got completely off track on that weld, but yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the reality. Alright, same settings. 266 wire speed, 18.5. Heat selector, inductance is at 4. But I had to set it. Whoops, going through it. I should have stopped and lowered the heat setting, but then again, you know, I actually had to do that. The weld came out really nice and flat. It's really, when it's a little too hot, that's actually better than if it's too cold. But if you see there, that's a really flat weld. So you can tell the Harbor Freight and the other one are both good welders. That welded right through that rust. Didn't care, still made a really nice looking weld. Let's bring it back a little bit so you can really see. Yeah, they're both nice welds. I just missed like hell. I was going off on a tangent over there, wasn't I? But if you look here down the middle, that's just nice and puddly and buttery. It looks smooth. This one's a little bit heavier, but they're both really good welds. They both went right through that. You know, this is pretty rusty and that's pretty nasty, and it just went right through it. So your cheaper, like $125 or the cheaper welder you could buy, none of them are gas, right? The cheaper ones. Well, they are. There's some that are gas. I had the cheapest welder you can buy gas that had a plastic. It had all plastic here. It was horrible. I mean, the plastic was all warping and stuff. I had one of those and had gas, and it had the switches, you know, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just the wire speed, and that's it. Those are all like probably the same guts and just different ones. If you've seen that welder, that takes gas, and it has a 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the switches. There's like 4 different settings on there, and then it has one knob. Don't buy one of those. You'll be disappointed. Especially if you're new to welding, you'll be like, I can't do this. With either one of these, a beginner can learn how to weld pretty well. But I'm going to say, if you're a very beginner and you've never welded, this YESWELDER is probably the way to go. I would just do that one. The Harbor Freight's a great welder, but the YESWELDER, the easy button, is just way easier to do your settings. This is why when they gave me this welder, right? They just said, here, try it. And I was like, really? You know, that's a $400 machine or whatever it is. You know, I don't know what the price is right now. It changes all the time. I'm saying it's $4-ish, $100 to $5-ish, whatever machine. And you guys are just going to give it to me? Yeah, just try it. And I tried it. And at first I was kind of a little bit set back because it didn't have all the knobs that this one did, you know. And after I used it and I set it to the settings that are automatically on it, I was like, you know, this is really easy. This could make somebody who has never welded before or done very little welding learn how to weld very quickly. So I recommended them to CT channel, which you guys know CT, and I also recommended them to 5150 channel. So if you look, pretty soon they're both going to have YESWELDER videos coming up, because I really want them to use it and try it and see if they can weld with it. And I'm going to tell you, if they can weld with it, then pretty much any of you guys could too. And I really think that almost anybody who can point, pull a trigger, and turn on a machine could learn how to weld with this machine very easily. You know, where if you already know how to weld and you have a Harbor Freight, you'll be happy with that machine. I'm not saying get rid of it and go get the YESWELDER, but it's also a good machine. But if you're brand new, this thing is the way to go, really, honestly. Anyway, I just thought I would make this video the kind of a little shootout to show you the differences. And I'm not going to weld anything else with it. I could weld a ton of different things. The other thing that I know that the YESWELDER would pull away from the Harbor Freight is when you get to like 1/4-inch steel. I am absolutely positive that thing would just melt 1/4-inch steel with no problem, especially if you had it on 220. Where the Harbor Freight, even with the 30, you start to, it would work, but you have to do multiple passes, and you're probably not going to get the penetration you would get with this machine. So it is a 205. This is a 140. It's a lot more machine for your money. Really, it is. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully it helps you guys if you're looking at welders to figure out what to do. If you're a beginner and just want one and you want to do some car stuff, I would say pull the trigger. Talk to you in the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe.